Today I'm going to tidy up and attempt to layer this wonderful Macabeanum, which is tucked away behind this camellia. He's in a bit of a difficult spot, very dry, underneath conifers with not much space, so how he'll do long term I don't know, but I'm going to try and see if I can get another plant for the future. I'll come around the back so you can see the branch that is going to be layered. As you can see, it gets very little light at the back, but there is one branch here with two big sets of leaves, and which is pretty near the floor. There seems to be lots of schools of thought. Some people just put a rock and see how you go, and that will probably work. At the attempt of over-engineering, I'm going to try and use some proper materials to give it the best chance of rooting, and also put in some irrigation which will run off this line which keeps the camellia irrigated, given the dry situation under these conifers here. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to dig out some of this poor soil underneath, which is dry, and I will replace it with some ericaceous, probably some perlite, to try and mimic a plant pot. Try and make it a little mound so it doesn't have to be bent down too far. Nick the bend as I was advised, put some rooting powder, cover it in soil with a big rock, and we'll see what happens in a couple of years. The aim is to give it the best chance to grow and become a healthy plant. I think as it grows I'll also stake these up so they grow tall to resemble a plant as opposed to a clipping or a cutting, and we'll see what happens. And here's what I'm going to use. I'm going to use some rooting powder. I'm going to use a dripper which will be attached and just use a steady drip. Don't want to flood it, and just to keep it watered throughout the summer. So that's been mixed. All of the large lumpy bits have been broken down. If I can't see any more, just break them up. So the plan is to dig a hole where the bend is going to touch the soil roughly in the middle, to replace the dry hard soil with some good potting material, and to mound it up. So I'm digging, and you can see it's been an extremely dry spring. This ground is really hard, dry, lots of stones, roots from, I think those are the conifers, and I'm trying to remove as much of this to make a nice bed. I'm nearly happy with my hole now, although it's interesting, there's two roots, there's one there and one large one. I'm going to cut this large one out because that's not going to do it any favours at all, pinching its moisture, and then I think we'll look to start filling the hole and getting the branch ready. There's the hole initially filled. I'm going to give it all a good water to try and get it to settle, so I don't want it to settle too much before adding more to try and make the final mound. And I'll press this down and keep pressing until it's firm. Because we're nearly ready, I was advised to nick it on the underside, give it a wound, put some rooting powder, plonk it down, soil on top, and then a big heavy stone to make sure it doesn't move. I've in fact used two rocks. The first rock is holding it down and the second one is propping the other one up. I think I used some of the old soil just to ensure neither of them moves and to really wedge them in place, so I don't want this thing to move at all. So I filled in around the two rocks with some soil just to try and give a bit more stability. I think it's strong enough unless someone tries to lift it off, and the two branches poke out unimpeded under a mound. I think I'll give it a very good water, and then I think the last step will be to put an irrigation dripper somewhere around here. Obviously that's where the branch goes in, so that needs to be kept the most moist. And then it's just going to be a wait. So the dripper is now plumbed in. This line comes down here to the same line which feeds this camellia. I'll bury most of this to make it a little tidier, and then I think we're nearly finished. So there's the finished layer. I don't think it looks too unattractive, and the natural stone I think blends in to some extent because it's going to be there for a couple of years. certainly from the front. And I think that should do. Whilst I'm here, the final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to break off some of these growth buds where there's none coming from the sides, i.e. where it's just singles. I was told this by David Milley, that essentially to try and keep it bushy, which I need to try and keep this plant small because of the very limited space. Knock off the ones which are just going to become leggy and long on their own, and always look to try and get a couple of growth points. So I simply snap them off. They're sticky. I'll put them in the bin, and then we'll just have to wait and see for a couple of years. The majority of the buds have now been snapped off just by hand, trying not to damage the rest, including those two down the bottom. And that should be it, ready for another year, another season's growth.